Welcome to the Intentional Encourager podcast, where each episode brings you compelling conversations and stories designed to entertain, enlighten, and encourage. And now here's your host, Brian Sexton.
And welcome into the Intentional Encourager podcast. I'm your host, Brian Sexton. Thank you again for joining us today. And I have one of the neatest people that I know on the Intentional Encourager podcast with me today. Now, the persona is that Canadians are just warm, wonderful people. And that's true. But this guy that I am bringing in today is just, he's an incredible individual. He is the author of the book, Perpetual Hunger. You will see it here as you watch it on video. And also the book, Unlocking Yes. And yes, I have both of them. And yes, he signed them. And his newest book, The Bonus Round, is coming out very, very soon. But what a treat to have coach, trainer, sales guru, Patrick Tinney with me today on the Intentional Encourager podcast. Pat, I am so glad that you're here. I have been wanting to have this conversation with you for a good while. Thank you for carving out the time to do it, my friend.
Oh, listen, Brian, I can't thank you enough. And I just pray for all of your friends in West Virginia. And I hope this challenge we're going through with the COVID does not do what it has done in other places around the world to your friends, family, your state. And I just hope we can all get back together again soon and treat each other as brothers and sisters the way it should be and must be.
There is no question about that, Pat, because again, we are, you and I are people. We love being around people. We love interacting with people. We enjoy just having the presence of people. When you think about this time, and I shudder, and I've refused to use the word unprecedented, because as a student of the scriptures tell us that there's nothing new under the sun, and I believe that. But what one word comes to mind for you in these times as you think back to the last 3 or 4 months? What's the one word that immediately jumps to mind to you?
I have become more educated. It's a sentence. I have become more educated.
Okay.
And I'm learning more about what it is to be a man, what it is I don't know about being a woman, what I don't know about being Asian, what I don't know about being Afro-American or Afro-Canadian, what I don't know about being brown. And I think that it's really important to say that, because I love everybody. I care deeply for people, and when I see hardship happening, and when you look at the without getting too far ahead of ourselves, but when you look at people who don't have money to go and get medical attention, that breaks my heart.
Mine too.
We're all together. We're all one under God's eyes.
That's right.
Red and yellow, black and white. We are precious.
That's exactly right. And Pat, the beautiful thing that I love about you is that I've seen you treat everyone the same. That's what I love about you, is your consistency. It doesn't matter economic status. It doesn't matter racial or creed or anything. I have watched you treat people the same. Has that always come naturally to you, that consistency in how you treat people?
You've asked a really great question, and actually I was thinking about that today. I was born in a very small town, and it was largely white. And my dad went bankrupt in a small town, so we had to move to another city so he could get work. And it was Hamilton, Ontario, and it's like Allentown, it's like Pittsburgh. And it is so racially diverse that it's just unbelievable. I mean, my best friends in high school were Ukrainian, Croatian, Greek, Jamaican, uh, uh, Guyanese, and I think I was the only. Oh, yeah, there was one Scottish guy, and I'm the crazy Irishman. So we were about as diverse as you get, and you know, I just grew up in that environment, and I can remember after the Second World War, things were very, very tense everywhere as people from across Europe, around the world, were moving to Canada, the United States. And in kindergarten, my best friend was a German boy. My three uncles fought in the Second World War. You can imagine them looking at me saying, how can this little kid become a peacemaker in our family? And the German boy was he was like my bodyguard. Nobody laid a hand on Pat.
Yep. And
so I think that's what teaches all of us, is to reach out. I've been talking to a few of my friends, and we're talking about all the challenges that we're facing right now, the great compassion that we must dig deeper to find. And I've said that we would probably be able to solve most of the problems in the world if we all just sit down at each other's kitchen table and eat dinner.
100% true. 100%.
Yeah, because you think about it, when you invite somebody over to your house, you're pulling out your best. I don't care if it's tacos or it's catfish, or it's you're cooking up some good grits, some nice greens. Doesn't matter. We're all in this together. We're only on Earth for a short period of time. We must do the best we can do, and we must include as many people as we can. One of the things I want to get something across, because it's really important.
No, go ahead.
People have asked me from time to time, what's my target market, and for my books, and it's not Canada. It's not the United States. It's not the UK. Believe it or not, it's India. India has more entrepreneurs per square foot in the world, bar none.
I believe that.
It's the truth.
I believe it, yeah.
It's a matter of time to try and, break through and, speak to more people. I actually had an Indian businessman reach out to me, and he worked for Adobe, and he wanted to level up into a manager's position. He reached out to a couple of other authors, and I was the only one that sort of got into a sustained conversation with him. Here's the click. I coached him up into a management position just using LinkedIn message. Wow. He was thrilled. You can actually go on to Amazon India and read his review of my book.
Wow. That is so cool. And Pat, what I love about this that you've done during the pandemic is that you have put things out there, and you've just said, I'm going to give an hour of my time away for free. And I shared that because to me it's valuable. I said, listen, you got to get this. But I also messaged you back and said, listen, I just want to talk to my friend, but I think that is so cool that you did that. What did you see that prompted you to say, I need to take the next step and go a little bit further? Because your time is very valuable, and what you have given to people is very valuable. But what prompted you to take that extra step?
Oh, that's a great question. Boy, you're on today.
I hope, man. It's the blind squirrel theory in full effect, Pat.
Yeah, occasionally they do find a nut.
Yeah.
I just thought, I was thinking about all of my sales brothers and sisters who may or may not have jobs in the future. And there's a lot of people right now that are hurting. There's a lot of people right now that are lining up for food. And there's a lot of people right now who are wrestling with the kind of change that we haven't seen since the Second World War.
Mm-hmm.
That's how much change is going on right now. I think it's constructive, but I also think that it's my duty. It's my duty. It's my community duty to reach out and say, listen, I would normally bill for this, and I bill at a handsome rate, but it's my time to give. Mm-hmm. And I think giving, first of all, makes my heart a very warm place.
Yes. Yes.
And, you know, it just gives me an opportunity to talk to people and just say, you're a good person. If you're in sales, you're working hard. There's people out there that criticize those in sales for not working hard enough. And I just don't see it that way, because I think that people that are in sales right now are probably working harder than ever.
Totally agree. I couldn't agree with that statement more.
Yeah. So if I can give somebody a leg up, if I can give somebody some ideas about how to level up and how to remove blockages.
Yes.
It's my way of paying it forward. I haven't had a lot of mentors, but I write about it in the new book, The Bonus Round. And there's 4 guys I mentioned there, and I tell a couple of funny stories. The one funny story I want to share with you is that I used to hitchhike back and forth to college from Hamilton to Oakville, and there were days, and that's 20 miles each way. And it was a full-time program and right through Canadian winters. So there were days when I only had enough money for bus fare to to get me downtown and get me up to the edge of the city, so I could start to hitchhike on the Queen Elizabeth Highway, which is a big highway. And I got into school one day, and the gentleman that ran the Applied Arts department at Sheridan College, he saw me sitting in a reading room at lunch, and his name was Jeff Jarvis. And he said, "Pat, what are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, I just collecting my thoughts, getting ready for afternoon classes." And he says, have you eaten today?" I said, "I had breakfast." He said, "No." He said, "Here's $10. Go up to the cafe, get some food."
Wow. And
I said, "I can't take the money." He said, "No, do it." He says, you paid to get into college, and if you don't eat," he says, you don't get the full benefit of the classes you're attending." I said, "On that basis, I will, but I'll pay you tomorrow." So went and got lunch, scrounged up $10, went into his office the next day, and I said, "Jeff, here's your money back." And he said, "Not so fast." I said, "What do you mean? You have to take this back." He says, "Oh, I will, over time." And I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Pat, every time you see somebody who's down on their luck the way you were that day, you must reach into your pockets and hand them $10. I can tell you that $10 that I accepted has cost me thousands of dollars over my lifetime." And I shared that story at Jeff Jarvis's eulogy. And the church just, whoa.
Yeah. I'll share a similar story with you. One time my pastor had asked me, he said, "Can you come help me sing at a funeral? Can you help me? I'll do the ministering part. You sing and play a couple of songs on the piano." I said, "Yeah, I'd be glad to." So I went with him. We went and got some lunch, and we went and helped that family. Well, the next Sunday he calls me in his office, and he said, I need to see you a minute." It's okay. Come in. And he handed me $100. And I said, "What's this for?" And he said, "The family chose to bless us. I wanted to give this to you." And I said, I didn't do it for that. I said, I'm okay. And he took the money out of my hand. He said, "Okay. So what'd you do that for?" He said, "Don't ever turn down a blessing."
Oh.
When it comes to you, don't ever turn down a blessing.
Yeah. You know what? Wow. Is that powerful?
And I told my son that because, we given him, while he is doing classwork and things like that, we're paying him to do some things around the house. Mm-hmm. He's 19, but we told him, "Look, your job is school. You let mom and dad do your job is school," because he has scholarships and things like that. He has to hit certain academic marks. And Pat, I did some work for him one day, and he said, "What's this?" And I said, you've been working so hard on your classes. Dad just wanted to do something for you.
Yeah, that's so cool.
And I said,
cool
don't
part about being a dad.
Yeah, don't ever turn down a blessing. Pat, I love what you said there, because I read that in your book, Perpetual Hunger, about hitchhiking to college. And I want to go to your background. You have a fascinating background, and you talk about it in Perpetual Hunger. The things that you did in life that no one else was willing to do. And Pat, that's the reason that I'm doing this podcast is I want to leave the sales expertise to guys like you, and I want to go encourage people. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But you've done things in your life that other people haven't done. Take me back as far as you want to go to you mentioned your dad and moving to Hamilton, Ontario. If you don't mind, kind of tell folks the things in your life that kind of brought you to this point where you are.
Wow. Well, my family were, we didn't know what the word was at the time, but they were go-givers. And so we had nothing. I mean, we had less than nothing. My family, so I was born into a house with no plumbing. And
you were born in West Virginia, right?
I was born in the suburbs of West Virginia.
Yeah, the suburbs of West Virginia. We call that Ohio. We call that the nice part of West Virginia. We call that Ohio. And I grew up Pat, I grew up in Southern Ohio. So the where I live, not to get off track, but where I live geographically, Southern Ohio is 25 minutes from me. And then far northeastern Kentucky is 25 to 30 minutes from me. So we live in an area known as the tri-state. And so I grew up in the Southern Ohio part. So that's why I can tease about that, because I'm an Ohio kid growing up. So
I get it. So my family, so my grandmother, my uncle who served in the Second World War, my mom and my dad, my sister, and then people that we would bring into our homes to help them. There was a French-Canadian couple that my dad brought in. We had another guy who had a head injury that my parents brought in. And everybody would just kind of pool their money. Mm-hmm. What this meant was that I didn't have a bedroom for most of my life. My bedroom was the couch. My bedroom was the dining room. It was just that was life as I knew it. And I at a very early age, I could feel the pressure of not having money. Mm-hmm. And so it's a really weird thing. I was recalling this with my sister a little while ago. I remember as a little kid sitting in the dining room, and I would draw pictures of animals and with my crayons. And there was 6 units in our apartment building. And I think I was 3 or 4. And I would go knock on the door, and I'd hold the picture up and I'd turn around and it would say 2 cents on the back. How are you going to turn down a little kid?
You were selling from an early age, my friend.
How are you going to turn down a kid with a little cat?
Here's the title of your next book. I've got the title of your next book.
Yeah.
Selling from the Womb. You've done it, my friend. You know, since the time you were born, you have been out selling. Goodness gracious.
I got to tell you, just for fun, because you and I are silly and having a good time.
Yeah.
I had a guy who everybody knew in the neighborhood that I was a scrounger. And in those days, scrounging is the new word for entrepreneur. I had a wagon.
I was thinking hoarding, Pat, but
hoarding. Yeah, that's a good word. I would walk up to people's front doors, and in the old days when fruit got delivered in baskets.
Yep.
And I'd say, "Do you have any baskets that you don't need?" And people would look at me and they would say, "What do you say to a little kid like that?" They'd say, "Yeah, I think I got one." Well, I'd end up with my wagon would be just all full of baskets, and I'd go down and I'd trade them down at the fruit stand for 2 cents a piece.
Wow.
And so I ended up with a quarter, and I was like 5. And if you got a quarter and you're 5 years old, back in the early 60s, you rock.
Well, you were the Canadian Mark Cuban. I mean, Cuban talks about selling trash bags when he was like 12.
Oh,
in his
I picked
neighborhood.
worms. I picked dew worms.
Yeah.
I remember there was a guy across the road there was a steam bath across the road from where I live. And he was sitting out front smoking a cigar, and he goes, "Kid." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "I'm going fishing tomorrow morning." He says, "Can you get me some dew worms around here?" I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "I'll give you a couple of dollars." I said, "Yes, sir. I'll be back in about an hour." He says, "All right, I'll wait for you." So I went up and got a shoebox at my house, and I filled the shoebox with worms.
Wow.
And I walked up and I handed him about 4 pounds of worms. And he stared down at me and he goes, "Wow, thank you. Here's $5."
Wow.
I overwhelmed him.
Did that teach you early on the power of problem solving? Do you think that really sharpened your sword as far as that particular skill is concerned?
Let me answer this another way. When I was a little boy, I never looked up into the sky, rarely. I was always looking down on the ground. Why? Because if anybody drops money, that's where it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I found more money in places where people, I remember one day I was walking along the street and I happened to stare down into a grid beside an apartment building. I looked down there and 4 feet down was a $20 bill. So I ran as quick as I could to get a piece of bubble gum, chewed that thing as hard as I could, found a long stick, jammed that stick down there, and up come the $20.
That's awesome. That is incredible. I found $20 in a bathroom in D.C. one night when I was in dinner, but I keep looking in bathrooms to see if $20 are laying on the ground, and that's been about 3 years ago, and it just hasn't happened like that.
Yeah, you know what? It's when I was helping my son develop, and we'd go fishing, and I'd say, "Son, always look down. You're going to see so much. You're going to see all of the insects, the animals." And one of the coolest days that we ever had was that we were fishing way up north. And when you say way up north in Canada, believe me, it's up north. And so, in the area were otters, and there was all kinds of animals. And what happened was we heard this huge commotion behind us. My son Sean was standing beside a huge tree that had been hollowed out, and there was all kinds of crawdads in the bottom of it. Mm-hmm. And what was happening was there was a family of mink, and they were fighting. And when they got it all settled out, the one mink jumped on the other end of the log and came up and stuck his head up and looked up at my son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and how many times do you get to share that with a child?
I thought you were going to say Canada, up north Canada, where men are men and it's real cold.
Oh, yeah. Oh. I got to tell you, I lived in Calgary and Edmonton, and they say it's a dry cold out west. The heck with that.
Yeah.
It was. And I remember I went out, I tried to get a job with the Calgary Sun in the newspaper business, and I sold everything after being the top rep at the Oakville Journal Record, and just drove out west. And when I got there, they didn't have a job. And I said, "Come on. I mean, I've just driven 2,500 miles. And they said, "No, nothing for you right now." I said, "Okay." So I just thought, I got to go find money. So I went and I rolled oil steel, the big oil pipes. Mm-hmm. And I was a yard ape. So I had to stand on top of a pile of pipes that were probably 15 feet tall. And these big machines that were called pettybones, they're like about they're about double the size of a transport truck.
And Calgary is Canada's Texas as far as oil is concerned, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it is. When the oil market rolls, Calgary rolls, and it's the home of the Calgary Stampede. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just so much fun. If you've never had a chance to go see the chuck wagon races live, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah, and they have the Calgary Flames of the NHL, and then they have the Calgary Stampeders of the CFL. So yeah, it's a big time city. Didn't they? I think in '88 they hosted the Winter Olympics in Calgary.
Yeah, might have been around then. Yeah, it was big. Calgary is. They're some of the toughest people in the world, and when I mean tough, I don't mean like angry tough. What I mean is they can scrounge and dig and hunt and live, which is why my heart goes out to them right now, because the oil business is so bad.
Yeah.
Prices have gone down so much.
Oh, they're getting pennies on the dollar per barrel.
And for us, with the heavy oil moving south, we're making it's a couple of bucks a barrel.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned when in your time out there? Because you spent some time out there, you eventually did get on at the Calgary Sun and worked there. But what was that? What was the biggest lesson that you learned being out there, Pat, that you brought back east with you when you came back east?
That I could think bigger. When I left Oakville, I was doing really well. Like, I was making stupid amounts of money, and I kept calling my mother up and saying, "Mom, you're not going to believe how big my commission check is this month. I mean, It's crazy, right?" When I went up to Calgary, I'll give you an example. I worked with some of the most skilled sellers that I've run into in my life out there. And there was no time clock, so you could work 24 hours a day. And we just worked and partied and worked. And I didn't have like an assistant or anything like that. You did everything yourself. So there was a new shopping center opening up. It's called Sunridge Mall. Now, the Calgary Sun was like the secondary newspaper because it was a tabloid. But I got a hold of the shopping center manager, and I got a list of every tenant that was going to come into that shopping center. I produced a 44-page section in the newspaper, almost 100% advertising by myself. Wow. That month, in 1980 or 81, my commission check was over $5,000.
Wow.
Now think, we're 40 years later. If you figure money doubles every 7 to 10 years, what would that be worth today?
Probably 30, 35 grand, just doing some quick math.
Yeah, or more. Yeah. And, so it taught me that I could think big. And, I wanted to, the back page position of the newspaper is always the most prominent one. I owned about 3 of those a week. There was no barriers on selling. A really funny story for you. So, like, I'm not a political guy at all. Okay. I just kind of, I look who I think is going to be the best leader. Doesn't matter who the party is, and make my decisions that way. So anyway, there was a guy that I met for a lunch. Lunch was big in the old days. So there was a guy I met for lunch, and we got talking about doing business, and he stopped me because I was a pretty young guy. He says, "Excuse me, son." I said, "Yes, sir." He says, "Before I do business with people, I have to know how they vote."
Oh,
I'd never run into this. I'd never run into this before, right?
Pat, my dad told me never talk about politics or religion with customers.
Yeah, stay away from all that, right?
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, what do I do here? So what I did was I paused for a moment, the deep think, and I looked up at him. I said, "Sir, I've never really known a lot about voting. Would you guide me through that process? How do you think I should vote?" I got the sale.
That's brilliant. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I had nothing to lose.
And everything to gain. And it goes along with you being a lifelong learner. It just fit naturally with you just being curious about people and curious about how they think.
Yeah, that's the truth, and just finding joy in what you do. I work my brains out. I mean, and as a dad and as a parent, you don't work hard for you. You work hard for your family.
Yeah,
I wanted my son to have a much better life than I had, and he did. That goes a long way, because when you finally do get to an area where you either have a partner or you have a family, you have extra responsibility, and you got to put food on the table, and you got to figure out how to scrounge up to make sure that everybody is getting the most they can get out of life.
Yeah. You mentioned the influence of your mom. What do you think your mom would say now that you're releasing your 3rd sales book? What do you think your mom would? How would she react?
I think it would be just 2 words. "Oh, Pat, You know, my upbringing was different than a lot of other people. My sister's 7 years older than me, and she got married when she was like 18. So like it's kind of like an only child, if you will. And I found school kind of boring. I know that sounds odd, but after I lost a parent, I started to think about. I was always thinking about how do I make money. When I got into high school, I was writing all of my exams, and I didn't, I didn't have to write finals most of the time. I think I wrote a few finals, in grade 12 or something, but very few, because I got recommended. And I can remember my mother going to a parent-teacher interview with our vice principal, Mr. Wong, and he was only about 5'7", only weighed about 130 pounds, but he scared every big kid in that school. They were just frightened that they would have to deal with him because he wouldn't back down from anybody. And this is in Steeltown. So my mom was a very quiet person, and she has the interview, and she comes home, and I said, so how did it go, Mom? She goes, well, son, Mr. Wong likes you. He thinks you're an interesting young man, but quite frankly, he said, we don't have anything here at Scott Park Secondary High School for Pat. We don't have anything to offer him.
Wow.
And I'm thinking to myself, what did I do?
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? But I guess I was a performer at school, played guitar, played some cool music, and up on stage in front of like 1,500 people, and as a performer yourself, you play piano. Yeah. It changes people's perspective. I ran for president of my high school. I didn't win, thank God, because they would have had me.
Yeah.
They didn't need me.
No. Well, yeah, me too. Yeah, I can empathize. I want to. It's really cool that Mr. Wong shaped that influence on you early on, because Pat, in sales, a lot of times it's so easy to tell a customer what they want to hear instead of telling them, I don't have what you need.
Yeah.
And good on Mr. Wong to be so honest and so direct with you and your mom to say, we don't have anything for Pat. He's exceeded everything that we have. And I find that, Pat, I just find that so incredible in today's society, because I think people, and I want to tie it to a sales concept. It's almost like today people are so desperate for customers that they'll find something, anything to grasp, to hold on to that customer, when in reality, they don't have anything for them.
Well, you know what? You got to watch out. You got to watch out. Never sell the wrong thing to the wrong customer. Don't do it.
Wow.
As a matter of fact, I take a lesson, and I put it in the new book about this. And, I was in the middle of a sale, and all of a sudden my gut went off. And I thought, Pat, what are you doing? You're selling the wrong thing to the wrong person. And it was a vice president and of a very large retail company. And he happened to also be a friend. So I telegraphed with my disorganized presentation that he shouldn't buy. Thank God he read me well. But and you might say, as a sales manager, you might say, oh yeah, Mr. Compassion, Mr. Compassion, thanks for losing the sale. No, it wasn't the right time for that person. It just wasn't the right time. It's like people saying, oh, I can't accept no's, or I'm afraid of people saying no. I don't like rejection. Come on, get over it. Yeah. They're like speed bumps. It's just like, it's like you're having a conversation with a friend. Now, sometimes there's big money on the line, and so you have to be more focused. You got to do more homework. You have to think like an insider. You have to speak like you have something to offer in that first meeting that makes that person say, you know what? This is somebody I think that understands our culture. I used to sell to Walmart head office in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember a vice president joining me on a call, and you just see him sitting there looking at me because I learned to speak retail. Now, when you're talking the largest retailer in the world and you're using inside language, and this guy comes out of so the meeting ended, we had everything done we wanted to do. We walked out of the meeting, the guy looks at me and he says, Pat, he says, you should never do anything else other than this for the rest of your life. And I looked at him and said, come on, you think this is all I got? Not a chance.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I still think the best is yet to come.
Well, and Pat, here's the thing. What I have learned, the greatest trait that I have learned is how to be adaptable. To put myself, and I'll share a quick story with you in the audience that my dad taught me. When I transitioned, I had sold food for 15 years, working in the distribution and brokerage side of food service. And I know your son's a chef, so you know that world a little bit. Yep. And then I went to then recruiting students for a culinary school, and they had other programs, and I did well there. But when my dad called me and said, I want you to come and help me in the heavy-duty rotating electrics industry, I knew what a starter was. That's about it.
Yeah.
And my dad said something to me one day. We were riding in the van. We were riding together. He was driving. He looks at me and he says, if I can get this plugged into your head, I'll have something. Because my dad knew that I had everything else that I needed to be successful. I just needed a little bit of knowledge. I just needed that inside language that you talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I've done in the industries that I've moved in and out of is I've learned to speak the inside language and then continue to get proficient. It's like learning a new language, right? I mean, it's like learning Spanish. You get proficient and then you get linguistic, where you've mastered the language. And that's what you did with the guy from Walmart.
Yeah, I spoke retail, and it was really important because.
Well, you spoke retail well. You just didn't drop a couple of key terms in there just to make Pat look good.
No,
you spoke with understanding and with diction, and you knew where to put the commas in the sentence.
My territory, and so I was a corporate seller, and so I represented 125 newspapers simultaneously across Canada at the top end. And as a retail guy, before we got up to that large scale, I had the largest retail territory in the company at the head office, and it was over $35 million a year. Mm. A large deal for me was $13 million with one signature, mine and the customers. Mm-hmm. And that's back in the 90s.
Wow.
So when you think about that in today's dollars, I mean, it's a deal that size, if for whatever reason it doesn't work out, that's 150 important jobs that would be in jeopardy. Now, did I ever think I was going to lose one of those big deals? No, but I'll tell you what, you get overconfident, and that's when you get your knees taken out.
Yeah. So what would you go back and tell Pat 20 years ago if you could go back and you saw Pat Tinney coming out of that deal that he just signed with a customer for $13 million, and you were going to sit down with that Pat and have a cup of coffee, what would you tell him?
Well, I think I would say, congratulations. It's hard work. It takes months to close those deals. But how you got there was with great relationships within that company. Mm-hmm. And so my advice would have been to work even harder on those relationships within that company. And then always have, so you've got your star account. You've always got to be looking for new accounts and non-traditional money. And just by nature, that's the way that I thought. But I think I probably would have said to myself, try to be more expansive. And you'd say, well, what does that mean? So I did a lot of product launches with the company. And I did things that other people didn't do. I was invited to sit on a pricing strategy committee. I was the only sales rep in the room. They were all presidents and vice presidents and managers. And so I got to do a lot of things. And so and I was when everybody else was studying marketing, I was studying production. So I'm a bit of a gearhead. I'm not a mechanical person, but I wanted to understand how every machine worked in our company. And so I would tear things apart that we did, and I would repackage them and make them bigger. And one of the last things I did was a program called Print, Plan, and Distribute. And it was taking our inserting equipment, our analytical data, and then hiring outside printers to print for us in a very structured format, which was very small, 8.5 by 11, different formations of that. And I took it to Marketplace and hired 2 printers to do it. And in some cases, I actually asked them to raise prices, which made them nervous. But I said, you got to trust me. My own internal people kind of questioned a couple of things. I said, guys, you got to trust me. And I presented it to our sales reps because I was a manager at the time. And we had a pretty big team. And a couple of people went out and sold. The first deal the one young lady sold was a 6 million distribution to Canadian homes in Canada. So at the time, that would have been around 55 or 60% of Canadian homes.
Wow.
And we delivered it without one complaint. That program did $1 million in the first 2 quarters, unbudgeted.
Wow.
The markups were amazing.
Talk about delivering some nice sales growth, my friend.
Well, again, think big. And you know what?
Yeah.
There were people pressuring me at the time to launch the program earlier than I was ready for. And I just said, not until we're flawless. And we were. Wow.
In the last few minutes, I've got a couple of things I really want to get to in our time together, because your story is so compelling. And that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. Take me through the biggest obstacle that you overcame in your life.
Wow. It was having older people tell me I couldn't do things and telling me I wasn't worthy. And this was from a very young age. And I came from a military family. And I never accepted that. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, I went to work for a piano delivery company. I lied about my age to get in. I was 15 when I joined. I was delivering, pianos as light as 350 pounds up to ones that were 800 pounds. Mm-hmm. When I started there, I was the junior. By the time I finished, I was running the teams. I was hiring all my friends from high school to come deliver pianos with me.
That's awesome.
There were weeks I was working 40 hours a week, going to high school and making as much money as my mother, working full time.
Wow. Just because you just had that determination that said, I'll show you.
That's exactly it.
So, Pat, take me through your biggest piece of intentional encouragement for folks, because again, as we started this conversation, you talked about salespeople that were losing their jobs. The market not being as robust as it needed to be. And you and I know the world of the number is the number. The number doesn't get adjusted. We have to sell to the number and by any means necessary. But this pandemic has flipped everything on its head financially and there are businesses that pivoted and have done phenomenally well. And there's salespeople that have done that. But there might be somebody out there listening, Pat, that said, man, I don't know how I've gotten through these last 3 months. I don't know how I'm going to get through the rest of this year. What one piece of intentional encouragement, Pat Tinney, do you have for those folks?
Be your own best friend. Be your own best friend. Do not talk to yourself negatively. Do not allow other people to talk to you negatively. It's unacceptable. And we are all going to get through this together. You're not alone.
Man.
We're with you.
So powerful, so succinct. I turned the speaker, just a little inside baseball here. I turned the speaker view on because I thought, man, Pat's going to go for a couple minutes, and that was so beautiful, though, my friend. That was so beautiful and succinct. Be your own, because here's the thing: if you don't wake up encouraged, no matter what's going on around you, you are useless to everybody else.
I know it sounds glib, but you are what you think.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and there are people that are going to just tell you that you can't do things in life. And to those people, I say, watch me. You can't stop me.
Yep. That has been your motto for 2020, and I love it. I love it. I told you that when you did that. I said, man, what a great motto. Pat, I think that it is an honor to be your friend, and I am grateful for our friendship. Tell the folks where they can find you, get a hold of your resources. When does the new book come out? Tell people when they can get the new book.
Yeah, so you can get me through LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn, and I like Twitter. So Patrick Tinney on LinkedIn, and my website is Centroid, CENTROID marketing.com, and go have a look at it. We just relaunched it. It's really cool, and I want people to know inclusion. One of the big images that I use up there is I made sure that my image represented a female market as well. As I was looking to redo the website, it dawned on me that there were not enough women in business pictures on iStock. Mm-hmm. So I thought, you know what, that's time to change that. And the other thing is, you can send me a message to the website. There's a there's a tab there to do it, and have a look. You know what to do? Read the reviews on Amazon about my books. Just go up. That's the way you get to know whether my content is worthy or not.
Well, in my humble opinion, and again, two things, my friend. One, my opinion, and $1 will get you a sweet tea at McDonald's here in West Virginia. And secondly, my initials are BS. So you take it for what it's worth. I highly, highly, highly recommend connecting with this man, getting his resources. I love that we didn't even talk about Pat. We could have gone 2 hours. We didn't even talk about the guy that in Michigan you called the greatest salesman you've ever met. We'll get back on another podcast, and we'll talk about Jim, the car salesman from Michigan, the greatest sales guy you ever met. Listen, go get Perpetual Hunger. Go get Unlocking Yes. Go get the bonus round. Go get with Pat Tinney. Connect with him. You will not be sorry. Pat, I am grateful for your friendship, and I'm grateful for your time today. Thank you for joining me on the Intentional Encourager podcast.
Thank you for your kindness. Keep doing great work, and it's an honor to know you, sir.
My thanks as always to producer Bryce Sexton and technical advisor Matt Means. And the ultimate thanks goes to the Lord Jesus Christ, who provides intentional encouragement every day through his word. And until next time, remember, everyone, everywhere, at any time, and any place can be an intentional